Josephat Mutekedza, who is alleged to have killed Miriam Nyazema on the 28th of July this year, has appeared before Bolton Crown Court for his plea hearing. Two charges were read out to Josephat, namely, charge number 1, the murder of Miriam Nyazema on the 28th of July 2015. Charge number 2, firearms offences by way of pointing an imitation gun towards the Lennoxes who were standing over Miriam. Josephat has pleaded not guilty to the murder of Miriam Nyazema. He pleaded guilty to the second charge of firearms offences. Earlier indications were that the defence were going for a medical defence to this case, but according to the defence statement submitted today, it seems the defence will try to convince the jury that loss of control was the reason Mr. Mutekedza killed Miriam. The defence of loss of control is a partial defence that may reduce liability for murder to manslaughter. The matter will be settled by a way of murder trial that is set to begin on the 11th of January 2016. zIMBO Live TV will be covering the trial and will give you minute-by-minute updates from Bolton Crown Court. Beauty Mshkora, zIMBO Live TV, Bolton.
At the last hearing, a plea hearing, it is very obvious on facts that Mr. Mutekedza caused the death of Ms. Nyazema. The defense raised one of the only effective defense against murder, which is a partial defense. It's partial defense because that kind of defense would not in itself discharge the burden of proof that murder was committed. And this partial defense is the one of loss of control. This was brought about in leading cases which practitioners and those who specialize in criminal law would know that is contained in Section 54 of the Coroner and Justice Act of 2009. Briefly, in a way that probably most of us would understand, what then is the partial defense of self-control? There are a number of facts here. It has to be demonstrated on facts and proof by the defense that the death caused by Mr. Mutekedza was because he lost self-control. It then has to be proven that the loss of control, which does not have to be sudden, was caused by a trigger, and that trigger must be a qualified trigger, the cause of Mr. Mutekedza, the defendant, committing the act of murder. Now, in the triggers, there are triggers or causes which the court would not accept. For instance, they would not accept that it was reasonable for Mr. Mutekedza to then commit an act of murder just because he had, according to him, a justifiable reason for revenge of something that was done to him, no matter how gruesome it might have been. Furthermore, it was specifically included in the law that sexual infidelity is excluded. So in other words, it cannot be accepted as a reason for defense of loss of control, because if we subsume that there was a relationship and Mr. Mutekedza lost control because Ms. Nyazema was involved in sexual infidelity or had an affair. What then needs to be proven again is circumstances. Mr. Mutekedza has to prove that the circumstances were so grave, that at the time or time leading to or at the time of committing this murder, he lost control, and that those circumstances are reasonable in the balance of probabilities when compared to someone of his age and sex, subjected to the same circumstances, would have committed the same act. This, in brief, is what this partial defense of self-control is. Of course, there are more details, which we will illustrate as we follow this case to its conclusion.
Makanaka, makanaka, Jesu.
mayenzi wintando yakho